I'm Dan D. Mega.
I'm Jim, and this is True
RVA.
This week we'll discuss the UPI race disgrace. Just ahead of time, we'd like to note that we did try to contact the city planner and the city budgetary office, as well as the city's PR representatives, and none of them would talk to us about this issue. Even I think that may be indicative of something, maybe not. Everyone knows we did try to contact them and get their side of the story. Wouldn't give it up. This week's episode is a surface investigation of a lot of the claims made by the Richmond Times-Dispatch and the Richmond city government in support of the UCI race sponsorship that they put up. For example, they blocked hundreds of roads, they shut down schools, clinics, intersections, they shut down the major thoroughfare, Broad Street, a 6-lane thoroughfare, the only straight thoroughfare through all of downtown. They shut that entire thoroughfare down for 3 weeks so that they could have a temporary building put up in the center of the road, as if they couldn't have found another place
You could do it in any parking lot right there.
And they also put up a new sign, a number of other things that we'll show you. Undoubtedly invested millions, if not tens of millions of dollars in something that I think is fairly apparent didn't benefit them whatsoever.
There are a number of claims that we'd like to take a look at, and many, many more that we question made by the Richmond Times-Dispatch on their front page article. Might also help to understand what is happening there to note that more than 4 other articles in the same edition about the same race are all written by the same person, linking them to the race's success and calling their journalistic credibility into account. However, we don't have time in the short documentary to go far into the larger issues. We do have time to take a look at a few of the most blatant and often repeated main statements made by the paper. For example, the attendance count, bolded in large print on page 1, the number 645,000, a number larger than the number of people living in the area that the race took place in. We will also look at the statements that the race was very popular, that it made huge profits, and that Richmond loved the event.
The first of the claims that we will address is that of popularity. As a rough means of establishing the veracity of this first claim within the Richmond community, we interviewed a number of persons on the street in 9 different areas of Greater Richmond: Shaco, The Fan, Chesterfield, the Museum District, Carytown, Short Pump, Glen Allen, Downtown, and Southside. We did our best to question a wide demographic variety as far as age, income, etc. are concerned. We were able to do so since we were only trying to ask 2 to 3 questions and took little of their time. In the end, we had a sample size of 120 persons. When this 120 people were asked if they had attended any of the race events, the overwhelming answer was no. In fact, only 3 of the 120 that said that they had attended any of the race at all, despite many of them living on the roads that the race incorporated in its routes. Only 1 person admitted to attending more than 1 event at all. If this was such a widely popular event with such huge attendance figures and such a large portion of the population in evidence, shouldn't we have had a much easier time finding persons who were there? Shouldn't we have found many more who were? If the claims of popularity were true at all, this shouldn't have been the case.
The article and other media also offered the claim that Richmond loved the race. A local free paper even implied in a cover article that those living in the lower income and public housing areas were turning to and appreciating cycling in general and the race in particular in large numbers. Of course, general claims like this are difficult to disprove and coincidentally require little or no direct support or references. Since we cannot directly prove or disprove that the entire population of the Richmond area believes any one thing, we will demonstrate the likeliness that the statement is true by demonstrating how common sense clearly indicates the opposite. To demonstrate this, we'll conduct a quick cost-benefits analysis. In particular, we will address not only the monetary costs, but also the less tangible costs of the UCI race to the Richmond populace. For example, the inconvenience of having streets closed, the inconvenience of being unable to attend work, the inconvenience of having work shut down, the inconvenience of losing money for any business in the area. We'll talk about those first. And those very same street closures caused a lot of problems for the average person in Richmond.
Okay, and where did you work?
Downtown in Shockoe Bottom at the Seven Hills Brewery.
And how was the parking there?
It was horrible. Some of us had to park across the bridge and near the Bane Tree. And
So they didn't have enough parking for even employees?
no. Also, some people had to park and walk from the Rockets Landing area.
How far would you say that is from the restaurant?
About 15 minutes walking.
Wow.
That restaurant employee was not alone. Many were inconvenienced by the bewildering amount of roadblocks put up during, before, and after the UCI race in Richmond. In one instance, indicative of the amount of consideration given to local Richmond citizens and businesses, a main thoroughfare, Broad Street, which is the main business corridor through all of downtown Richmond, was closed down for 2 weeks, and a tent was erected in which to hold the closing ceremonies. Now, despite the fact that they only needed a small area and could easily have used the parking lot directly across from the area they chose to blockade, they chose to put the tent in the center of a 4-lane street blocking down all 4 lanes, as well as a number of streets crossing by that would have crossed over there. This blocked access to the main medical facility in Richmond. Unsurprisingly, even the average guy on the street wasn't happy about this either.
But it was down here yesterday?
Another indication of popularity would be attendance, of course, or lack thereof.
This is a typical intersection right near Monument, one of our major streets, totally shut down for something that nobody in Richmond has any interest in. We're right next to the event, literally 50, maybe 100 feet away, and there is no one here. Maybe 6 or 8 people.
As indicated by our survey, the lack of attendance was not an uncommon sight. Considering the huge effect these same road closures had on local businesses, as well as the main assertion throughout that business was given a huge boost during the time, any attempt to ascertain the reality of those claims would be incomplete without ascertaining what the actual effect on local business was.
My name is Rusty. This is backstage in Richmond, Virginia.
First of all, what did the city tell you when they announced the race to business owners?
Oh yeah, they said that they would like us to come out for certain meetings on certain days that, obviously for during business hours that no one can attend.
Tell you about the race?
I didn't really get any information directly from the city. It was, a lot of hullabaloo in the newspapers and stuff. But as far as actually reaching out, I didn't get any contact.
Up around lights, so I don't see how blocking the streets off and making it harder to get to our business was beneficial to us in any way.
Given the previous evidence, it is quite difficult to believe the figures that have been released regarding attendance. Regardless, we will address that question of attendance in this section.
Is this how it's been most days, this many people? Or
I don't know.
you don't know the first day here?
Here we have video taken at the final race, admittedly the most popular race at the entire race event, made up of a number of races. And if you'll notice, as the camera begins panning around, it looks like quite a lot of people. And that's how it appears in a number of the publicity photographs as well, from the front. But if you look from the side, top, or back, you'll note that any crowd of people, even at this event where the largest crowds supposedly are, they're only 2 to 3 persons deep against the barrier, and they only exist in any amount very close to the race's end. Even at the event, those in attendance, anything like the numbers quoted by the various media sources was noted by the other people attending the event.
There's certainly not like thousands. Yeah, it's not that deep back here. No. There's 400 or 500 people here.
I'm Klaus Verslaus, owner of Lucky's Bicycle. We're at the corner of Meadow and Broad Street. I actually did a little booth at the... During the race it was fairly slow.
This is a typical intersection right near Monument, one of our major streets. We're right next to the event, literally 50, maybe 100 feet away, and there is no one here. Maybe 6 or 8 people.
Now, does the number 645,000 seem realistic? You tell me. Even given the lack of depth in this quick documentary, it seems apparent that the assertions made by the Times-Dispatch and other sources, particularly those concerning the attendance and effect on local business, are completely fabricated and totally false. Why do so? Well, let us take a quick look at what was invested in the race, just by the city alone. Seems like a lot, doesn't it? Well, it turns out we heard rumors that a bit more might have been spent and hidden in other accounts. So we did a bit of investigation of our own. Here's a quick example of one of the many questionable things we found out.
Well, I know my uncle ain't for splurging on your health care. Well, y'all grunt, just stare as we infiltrate the lair, plant devices that lend us a good ear. Here, we the nicest, and what's blaring in your ears is an APB for us, but you're too scared to fight us. We gon' breeze by you like the lightest feather or dragon scale till we reach the light bit at the end of the trail and almost hit the ship. We confronted by a big titty bitch. Shit, Boo Bazooka's twin, now we struggling a bit. Yo, smuggling and shit is lionless. I ain't signing for staring down the barrel of dudes at the barrel and pissed. Guess that's the danger that comes with this.
Break down the bars, we run through the yard, we jump over the fence, we knock out the guards, we get away, motherfucker, get away, motherfucker. Break down the bars, we run through the yard, we jump over the fence, we knock out the guards, get away, we knock out the guards, get away.
Now, this is just the cost of one element of the race infrastructure. We simply chose it as an easy way to get at some solid, real-world, legitimate figures. Even if we were off by 50% and have doubled the cost, unlikely though that may be, it's still many times more than admitted to in documentation. Given that, we posit that it's certainly reasonable to question the remainder of the same document and any totals it purports to contain. Most of this documentary was found via asking a few simple questions and applying simple deductive reasoning. It certainly makes apparent that a number of media documents and their sources are at best in error and at worst purposely obfuscating. The real questions are why and for whose benefit.
They grew on beef, who knew? Best see my orders, disorder reigns supreme when I'm ordered. Hold up, that shit, rather be martyred by mortars than sit in the mortuary. Cause my spit's so sick and thick, it knock your fortress.
Gotta get your hands up. No fucking around. No fucking around. Gotta stand up. Get up if you don't wanna fall down. Gotta get your hands up. No fucking around. No fucking around. Gotta stand up. Get up if you don't wanna fall down.
I know this nigga well, I wanna hear your 6 cells. Know my 6 cells gon' dwell in this abyss in hell by all the citizens to which they told they sick lies. That the liquid was the shit in it, don't mind, control them. Now who hold them down? The same guys, all the while they just tried to disguise the gods. We see through that shit like bright light shine to dark corners of the universe where they hide. My laser beam disperse and they die. Rapid motherfucking fire, target practice dispatches more lives to corpses than their warships. Fuck we supposed to do? Fight up worldwide abortion of the senses, common truth? Ha, hell nah, dude, we be giving it to you. So a large dose of the ooze is what you get into. Just to show you so you know you got nothing to prove. Here's a hug of the love drug, up in it fear soon.